Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to today's Grey Market Blast, where the awesome Angie Setzer will provide a rapid roundup of the latest pricing flows and market moving news in agricultural markets. But before she does, I better get the legals out of the way so I don't get a slap on the wrist. Nothing discussed on this Spaces session constitutes trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ Global Limited, Traders PIQ or PIQ Suite, or indeed that of the hosts, which is, of course, Angie and myself, Ryan.
Super
Happy
awesome,
Tuesday.
Ryan. Happy Tuesday. Tuesday. I don't even know what I want to talk about today. Do you ever have days where you just wake up and you're just like, to hell with all of it? You feel just a little disgruntled. And I'm not even grumpy. I'm not anything. I'm just really just kind of like, this again.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's go. My favorite. So yeah, market wise, now that I've set the mood, market wise here, we're really kind of paying attention. I started my discussion this morning, really kind of focusing on the outside market sell off and just the overall sentiment that we're seeing in the world today. We've seen some really different or weird or whatever adjustments to expectations. We've got a lot of uncertainty in the market. And so here we are, and really we'd had a couple different conversations about the potential that we slip into a recession or see a slowdown in U.S. economic growth. And so we're really kind of paying attention to what that means for the dollar, because obviously the value of the dollar or what the dollar is doing can have a great impact on grains. I found, though, that the conversation about the dollar and its relationship to grains is always when the dollar is strong. Everyone likes to point out the negative relationship between the dollar and grains, but when the dollar starts to collapse, we never really point out, the opposite. But hey, whatever, I digress. And so, the comments about, potential for slowdown and sort of this negative attitude when it comes to consumption as we move ahead and yada, yada, yada. Just something we're watching. Obviously, the price of crude and value of cost of gasoline and consumer sentiment and all of these sort of things can have an impact on biofuels, which in turn indirectly impacts corn. But not only biofuels, it can impact livestock, beef demand and some of these other things. So when you get some outside sort of concerns or outside fears, we always just pay attention. Mostly out of the corner of our eyes. Simply because, yes, it should be on the radar because it is something that we're seeing. Also, though, what I caught that was a point of interest to me, because I've been kind of arguing that the sentiment towards China, I said in September and in October, like this, to me, was a shift in sentiment and a shift in and maybe it changes going forward. But you did see Citibank come out, and kind of downgrade what they're thinking the U.S. is able to do and upgrade to a certain extent what they're thinking China is able to do. You've seen a bit of a swap in money going into China and money coming out of the U.S. Not saying that they're directly correlated, but it is an interesting thing to see, that perhaps we are seeing a more friendly, which is a relative term, investment environment in China and some of these other factors that we're seeing, which leads me to, go ahead.
Just quick, I think this is a really good point because it's, as you said, it's like flows just in general, money market flows and whatnot. Like, at the end of the day, cash is very fungible.
Yes.
Cash will always find the best place to get returns.
Yes.
So up until very recently it was the US, but you're right. We saw outflows from just risk assets in the US flowing into risk assets in Europe, and now again risk assets in China. And like you said, it's not a direct cause, right? It's not got a direct connection with grain markets, but at the end of the day, more risk, money towards risk assets, the more it drains out of it, drains out of an environment, the less you've got to go into things like grain markets and
yes.
stuff. So it is all interconnected.
Yes, yeah, and then we're waiting to see. Obviously, if you have fears of a recession, it's hard to say that we could have inflationary pressure, correct? And so there's a bit of an argument or a discussion currently as to which is more likely. Are grains cheap in the face of inflation? Do we see tariffs create more in the way of inflation? But does there's a lot of moving pieces that we never knew we were going to have to pay attention to as grain traders that we get to pay attention to now. And so that leads us to my second point, or the second piece of conversation that I find interesting today, is that we're obviously getting close to some type of gathering or meeting between President Trump and China's President Xi. We had a rumor or a report yesterday out of the Wall Street Journal citing a birthday summit was in the works, saying that they were going to get together in June. But then this morning, the South China Morning Post reported that the two could come together as soon as April. Basically citing unnamed sources on both sides. They're kind of saying that Trump had wanted to meet Xi within his first 100 days. Basically there had been an extending of an invitation to Mar-a-Lago. Xi really would like to see him travel to China instead, which Trump said he would, during the election
Yeah,
shortly thereafter.
I was
Um,
I was quite surprised by that.
yeah,
So
yeah. The
one of
whole
the more recent reports I've seen is Trump, yeah, was quite up for the idea of going to China, which, you know, considering not so long ago, well, a couple of weeks ago, we were worried that, it'd be a massive trade war between
right.
the two.
Yeah.
Is everything's just, switching on a dime.
You just have to be ready. It's a fluid situation, is what we call it in the trade.
Exactly.
But I did find it interesting because it would be considered a diplomatic win to have Xi. Like there's a lot of conversation about who should go where for what. But yeah, to see President Trump willing, and we are also seeing there. I think it was Bloomberg reported that there is some frustration on the China end because they're trying to ask for direct. Like what is it that you want us to do? I keep thinking of the Notebook whenever I say that. What do you want? And Trump's like, I don't know. You should know. It's fentanyl, and he's listed, and they're saying, not to make light of it. The Trump administration is saying, hey, you know what we want. Like we've told you, you just give it to
Yeah.
us. And so there is a lot of talk that China is still really actively saying, just we'll buy ag products, we'll buy energy products, we'll do these things. It's harder for them to make sweeping harder, I'm using air quotes, you just can't see them, sweeping legal changes or whatever that the Trump administration is asking them to make to restrict fentanyl. But you have seen them make a few moves. And so Trump and Xi have both, I think it's super important also to put out there that they've both really kind of said they have mutual, like an admiration of one another. And so, yeah, we'll probably see that situation escalate, if not once, two or three more times between the two before all is said and done. But we'll be watching that closely. And there was some talk yesterday. We'd seen some Chinese crushers cancel a couple loads of U.S. soybeans. I'm going to guess that's probably a tale or a factor of the customs. We're taking those three companies, CHS, or I think it was Dreyfus was one, and another group, I think Bunge affiliate out of the PNW, are not allowed to ship into China currently. And so I would guess that might be a factor in that. That was part of why soybeans were under pressure yesterday. But we'll definitely be watching to see, how the two countries work with one another. But it is interesting just, to kind of point out in the short term, we're likely to see a continuation of rising domestic agricultural prices in China. They're really working
Right.
to restrict the flow of, they've not bought anything from an import standpoint of corn and wheat. They're really working to restrict the flow of incoming soybeans. They have been since the beginning of January. They're still battling deflation. They do not want to be. They want higher food prices. They're like the only country in the world right now that's like, if only we could make our food prices go up. So, it's kind of an odd thing. I will never, my little pea brain will never wrap itself around the understanding of, wanting inflation and not, blah, blah, blah. But in any event, China has a little bit more of a hard line that they can come with, but at the same time, they don't. So we'll see. Over to the Russia great thing that we've got going on. We have a high level conversation taking place between the US and Ukraine today. Ukraine did launch, though, its largest drone attack on Russian soil, basically since the start of the invasion overnight. Russian officials say they shot down 337 Ukrainian drones over different parts of the country, with 3 casualties reported in the Moscow region. So, like, this is the first time that I can remember. And I might be wrong, but is it the first time we've heard casualties from Ukraine attack? Like I've heard of injuries, but not lives lost.
Moscow, I've not heard, if there has been one, it's not been for a while. Well, I've not seen reports from one getting into the Moscow region in quite a while. And
Yeah, and this one actually took people out.
Yeah.
And so you've had a couple.
When I saw that this morning, I was like, oh, hang on a second.
Yeah.
It seems like it could be a further escalation just at the wrong moment.
Well, that's what it feels like to me too, and so that's what I'm watching, because you did see Russian lawmakers respond and say, "Hey, we need to." You remember the missile they shot in Dnipro? I can't say it, I said it wrong probably, but the Ukrainian or the Russian missile that's supposed to be very high level ballistic, yada yada yada. They shot one off. It was going to be a massive escalation last fall. You know what I mean? And then we ended up just kind of being like, "Oh, well, that was fun." The lawmakers are saying, or there's been a Russian lawmaker, a couple of them that are talking about the supreme leader and Putin, making that decision, but that he should really ramp up the aggression as well. We saw the Kremlin warn Russian citizens not to wear rose-colored glasses when it comes to the U.S.'s participation in peace talks. Zelensky sent a handwritten note to President Trump apologizing apparently for his behavior at the White House. Like there's a lot of things that are taking place there as well, a lot of developments and uncertainties. But I would say at this point in time, like this idea that we're really kind of working towards peace is great and it makes us feel good. But I don't know if the
Yeah,
activity on the ground points to
yeah,
a same
exactly.
thing.
It's a classic actions speak louder than words,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And we're
And what
really seeing an aggressive ramp up on
yeah,
both sides. And we all know that one of the precursors for peace, right, is a freezing of the front line. So both
yes,
sides are going to aggressively try to figure out what that looks like. Russia has said they're not giving up any land whatsoever that they have captured, and they're really making advances on getting Kursk back as well, Russia and North Korea. And so that kind of hurts Ukraine's hand to a certain extent, or it's one of those things that we're watching.
and Trump did say last night, I believe it was, that getting U.S. intelligence back into Ukrainian hands all depends on Ukraine really, like, well, Zelensky in particular, really making the right noises that he does want peace. But bear in mind they're kind of high-level delegations talking right now. They're going to look at what happened last night and say, well, hang on, you say you want peace, but like I said,
Yes.
first we need to re-stress that myself and Angie, we're not playing a political side on this. We're just trying to talk about the facts that are
What
involved.
is going on, because it has a huge implication. Like everyone wants to think war was bullish, end of war bearish, and in reality we don't really know. There's a lot of conversations about what farmers are going to choose to plant in Ukraine, an indication that we could see an increase in sunflowers and other oil seeds because of the rise in local vegetable oil prices, and some of these other things, the costs associated with growing feed grains. Like there are a lot of factors at play that could it's just the butterfly effect. It's that
Yes.
deal where, the conversation today could have a huge, factor, or play a big role in, like I said before, in 5 years, Ukrainian, corn exports could be half of what they were pre-invasion, and the world would adjust. But we just have to be really careful because we're at a bit of a precarious sort of place, and what the future looks like, I guess, is just my take. And so lastly, we're looking at cash grain movement. Oh, we have a USDA report today, but whatever. Lastly, we're looking at cash grain movement. And so to me, that's the one thing that I really want to reiterate, is like yesterday's export inspections for corn were a marketing year high. We shipped over 70 million bushels of corn. Like this goes back to 2021 on the amount of bushels shipped in the week for March. Now, of course, with the uncertainty over freight costs and uncertainty over trade, it is in your best interest as a cash trader to just get the bushels in hand as quickly as possible. So that could be an influence, or that could be influenced by that. But we did see Spain come in as a buyer from the U.S., which really is just more of a sign that logistically supplies out of Europe or the Black Sea are exceptionally tight. And in addition, the U.S. is still the only supplier of consequence until we get out into June at the earliest, with Argentina coming into the market, or August, when it comes to Brazil. So cash grain movement is going to be something that we're going to continue to watch. Should help to support corn movement as we move ahead. Soybean shipments were on the higher end of expectations yesterday as well. We should see, with the delays in Brazil's logistical ability to really kind of flow.
They've got the issue at the port,
Yes,
right?
Bacarena, which someone made a horrible joke about. Hey, Bacarena, and now it's stuck in my head forever. And so they have made themselves a mortal enemy, and I hope they know it, because forever I will. Yeah, but yeah, so there's a big port. We handled about 15 million metric tons of grain a year. It should be back up and operational, in around 3 months. I guess the talk is June. And so we'll be watching that. But it's created some holes in the physical market that we'll be watching, and will have an important role in spreads and cash and all that good stuff. So we'll see. And we do have a USDA report out noon Eastern time. Check out my Twitter, and we'll do a spaces with a live drop on all of the numbers. Traders aren't really expecting it to be a big thing. It's old crop only. People are really confused about that and keep coming at me with their new crop supply and demand estimates. I could give two shits less. It's old crop only. Thank you. And so I love you, but just fold it up into a tiny piece of paper and put it somewhere else as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned right now when it comes to new crop outlook. But I'm a little, like I said, disgruntled when I started this. So that should wrap it up. 9:30 morning. We're right here getting ready to open, and the market, beans are up 5, corn's up a couple, wheat's down a little bit. We'll see what today brings.
Awesome. Well, I'm now in my head as well. Can't stop thinking
You
about
can
what.
hate you can hate, it's John Locke
Oh,
on Twitter if you
oh
want to
yeah,
find him and just send him hate notes. It's fine. You can.
yeah,
So
yeah. Thanks for that. Well, Angie, thank you so much. Well, I think thank you so much. We'll see if I'm still humming
right,
it later on today.
exactly.
You're awesome as ever. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. I know I've seen reports from quite a few people saying they're having trouble with spaces. So if you have managed to make it on to today's show, great. We love seeing you listening in. And hopefully we'll see you all tomorrow with more awesome content from Angie.
I'll be
Until
ready to
then,
rock and roll.
goodbye.
Have a good one, guys.